Afternoon, garage. So last week, as promised, we're gonna go over that warm-up regulator. That thing's a quirky little device, and really you kind of get it going by, well, whacking it with hammers. So I found out that the thing's not very scientific. There's very little information online. People will tell you one thing and another thing, and pretty much everything I found out online was untrue, except for, how to put a rebuild kit on it. And well, I did that last week pretty good. But well, let's take a look at that, see how far off it is, see if we need to adjust it at all, and what that takes. All right, here we go. About 5.3 bar, that's a bit much. Okay. 4.9 bar. Happy with that. Now I'll switch the valve and do control pressure. Right at 2 bar. So what I'm going to do is hook a wire up to the warm-up regulator, get that hot, and see what our warm pressure is. And then we'll plug in, I need a little harness here for the warm-up regulator. We'll plug that in, and we'll get a hot pressure, which should be about 3.3 bar, and see what they are and see if we need to adjust it at all.
A few minutes later.
Alright, so that's about 2.7, 2.9 bar, so that's really high. Almost 3 bar. And with vacuum applied, it's like about 3.1 bar. 2.3 bar. So that's about 0.8 bar in vacuum enrichment. Alright, here's a warm-up regulator chart for a 76 and 77 911 with an 033. So you can see I've marked exactly where we are. Now this is with no vacuum on the warm-up regulator. So you can see we're sitting at about 2.2 bar at 22 degrees C in here. And well, probably about 3.1 bar. So if you draw a straight line in this, you can see that it's not actuating enough. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it apart, look at that bimetallic strip on that warm-up regulator, and see if I can adjust it, make it have a little more range. More importantly is this number here. So you're supposed to have, this is actually test vacuum enrichment, so you're supposed to have it anywhere between 520 and 546. That's pretty specific, and we've got 800 over 800 millibar of enrichment there, or in this case, de-enrichment. So basically, this is a wide open throttle, no vacuum. It's supposed to be about 3.3, and it's supposed to be about 3.8 if you go by these numbers. And of course, you can see if we're at 3.3, it's going to go well over 4. That's going to make the engine run lean. So let's open it up, see if we can get this down to where it's not moving so much, maybe by decreasing the spring pressure, or maybe changing the perch that the diaphragm sits on. And then we'll kind of focus on this and see if we can straighten this line out a little bit. Shouldn't be too bad. Alright, first I'm going to try to get this number down here, this vacuum enrichment number. It says 900 millibar. One thing I want to do is I kind of want to maybe either take the pressure off this, or I don't know if you can see, this is what happens when the vacuum diaphragm moves. See, it kind of goes in and out there. So I think maybe a good idea would be to limit that kind of travel. And this is actually the seat that it sits on. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a measurement of this so I get kind of a baseline and see if I can knock this in a little bit. And then what that'll do is it'll lift this up. It won't have nearly as much travel and maybe limit, well, the amount of pressure that it affects in the system. So now to be a little scientific about this, I think what I'm going to do is I'll measure exactly how much lift there is there, and well, cut that in half. First I have a vacuum line connected on it, shoved it in my mouth like I always do. We'll take a measurement. Put 5.2. 0.37. Probably just want to reduce it like 1/10 of a millimeter. Alright, so I brought that out about a 0.12 of a millimeter. So that's pretty good. Didn't take much pressure at all. Put it back together and I'll see if we can look closer to that 550 here. Probably like 2.6. I'm going to apply vacuum. That's almost exactly right. So that's about 5.5 bar of enrichment right there. Way different than that 0.9 enrichment. So shortening the distance that that diaphragm can travel, well, it fixed the vacuum enrichment here. So this is what you do. There's a little shaft right here. I hope this is going to be enough to support this. Anyway, you want to hit this shaft, and what will happen is this pressure will actually come down. Yeah, I went too far. Damn it. Okay, gotta take it apart. Push that pin back up. Once you get done setting the range on the vacuum enrichment, you know, you next have to set the range on the hot and cold control pressures. And of course, I said before, that's kind of done by bending this tab in or out. One thing really handy is to use maybe some freeze spray, because this is going to take a long time. I've had this apart 30 or 40 times, and if you're waiting for the whole entire thing to cool down every time, well, you're not going to get really good readings. So what I recommend is just spraying with freeze spray when you get done, because it's going to be hot, and then measuring the room temperature, make sure it's cooled to room temperature, and then put it back together and throw it on the car and test it then. That way you know you have cold pressure, and when you plug it in, you'll have a hot pressure, and you see what that range is. If that range isn't correct, then you want to bend this tab a little bit more. And I just found out, don't go banging on this thing until you're absolutely sure that your range is correct. In this case, my range is supposed to be about 1 bar. So, going to pull this apart and keep on bending this in and out until I get 1 bar, and then I'll set the pressures. And boy, this tool's really come in handy. Works better than a pistol grip. Spins these apart real quick like. I wish somebody would have told me this a long time ago. There we go, 3.2.
15 minutes later.
Right at 2 bar. So that's about 30 pounds. Boy, this is one of those big projects like cleaning the injectors, and learned a lot on this. So I guess the takeaways are, first of all, you want to adjust the fuel pump pressure at the distributor. Make sure that's right, because nothing else is going to be right if that's not right on, and inspect. The next thing is to check the vacuum enrichment on the control pressure regulator or the warm-up regulator, because if that's not in spec, well, then nothing else is going to be right either. In fact, mine wasn't right, and I think the reason is because this disc on this diaphragm is much thicker than the other one. The original metal spring seat that's mounted to the diaphragm is 1.9 millimeters, and the aftermarket replacement is 1.65 millimeters. So that would be like a 1/4 millimeter too thin, and what that would do is create too much travel, too much vacuum enrichment. And I had to actually adjust that cup down a little bit to take up this space. Once I got the the enrichment value close to 550, then I could actually go forward and work on getting this straight. Once the vacuum enrichment is set, it's set to a good value here. What you're going to do is you can adjust the range. So you can see that this had much different range than when I started here. So basically, by adjusting the range, you can adjust the tilt of this, and you can get more or less enrichment out of it. This is done by bending the bimetallic strip. You're able to see that I stuck a screwdriver in there and kind of moved the strip up or down. So by bending it down, you got less range. By pulling it up with the screwdriver, it had more resistance and actually was able to get more enrichment. In fact, you could make this thing go straight up if you wanted to. Once you get done bending the spring and you're sure you have the right of enrichment, you're going to be up here, and you basically want to tap on that little post until you get it to where it's supposed to be. So if it's out of range like this, what you have to do is you have to push that pin back out and start all over again adjust the bimetallic spring again, push it in, bend it up or down, and then bring it back in line again. Eventually you get it, and I got pretty good at doing this. I took it apart 30 or 40 times, I figure. Most important thing is don't go banging on that pin to adjust something, because if something else is screwed up in here, it's just going to make it worse. So once again, the best thing to do is adjust the fuel pump pressure, verify your vacuum enrichment is correct. If that's correct, adjust the bimetallic strip to set the range, and then bring the fuel pressure into spec by tapping on the adjustment pin. Next thing I want to do is I want to adjust the sensor plate here, make sure it's flush with the housing. You can see here when I shine the light on it, it's pretty even all the way around. So let's check the depth. Now to check the depth, you gotta have the fuel pump on. So you can see after I turned it on, it kind of dropped a little bit. There's a little gap in here, you can see that as I push it down. We're gonna push it right up into position there. So this needs to be adjusted a little bit. As the old saying goes, gotta retune and adjust the sensor plate. Sounds a little low.
About a couple minutes. Just retune and adjust the sensor plate. Sounds a little low.
Alright, it's kind of silly. These cars have this little spring here, and basically what you want to do is just bend up or down that loop there. And then what that'll do is it'll push it upwards or downwards. Boy, that's hokey. Alright, there you go after adjustment. Looks much better. It's flush with the housing here. Alright, injector test time. Alright, so looks like they have similar volumes. Now I'll empty them out and check for leakage. Looks like this one here is dripping. That one there is dripping too. Lucky for me, I have two brand new injectors.
A few minutes later.
Already got those injectors changed. All right, looks pretty good. All right, so that kind of wraps up the fuel system. Boy, I'm really glad I just left it on the test stand and didn't throw it in the car, because being able to troubleshoot these problems right here where I can get at them made it really, really nice and easy. That warm-up regulator, man, that thing was a mess. It was just all over the place, you know, and didn't help with that rebuild kit was just a little bit off from the original part. And man, I would have, like I said, that thing was off 30 or 40 times. It'd have been a complete nightmare to, well, have to do it in the car. But the only thing that failed really at the end was this injector here and then that injector there, and I changed them out. You can see there's no problems there, so my pressure's holding here for, you know, a few hours or something like that. That's really good. So everything should be ready to go. I think I'm just gonna, you know, put the O-rings on the injectors and slap them in, get this transmission mated with this thing and get it in the car. So I think this is one of the more useful videos I've ever had. And the reason is because there's so much misinformation online about this warm-up regulator over here that you watch different videos and everybody had a different opinion on what happened with each of one of the parts, and nobody mentioned at all how to set the range of the vacuum enrichment, which is the most important thing when you're setting up a warm-up regulator. I think also one of the things I learned about the fuel system other than the warm-up regulator was those injectors that I cleaned. Yeah, they're only $35 a piece or so, and I guess you could just change them all out and you wouldn't have to go through what I did. But hey, if you can get some more life out of these injectors, they're good to go. And it looks like its weak point is if you put them on, they always flow well, but if they never shut off and they continue to leak, it's time to change them out. Hey, if you get anything out of this, which I hope you do, give me a like and subscribe if you haven't. Well, I'm going to be throwing this thing back in and firing it up next time.